Y pero no sé si ella quería pegar yo no pero ella manda y entonces ella manejaba sí, en una fábrica de que hacía la era un business muy famoso pero las cosas grandes usualmente no no, yo no tengo que la casa, le doy especies, probar unos cuantos años, pero
is it anywhere you can? All right, good evening. My name is Alexis and I work with Dream Week. It is an honor to be a part of Dream Week. It's a celebration of ideas, diversity, and progress. Dream Week is more than an event. It's a movement that inspires meaningful conversations and actions to shape a better future. This platform reminds us of the power of dialogue. By sharing perspectives and embracing diversity, we strengthen our communities and create space for real change. Dreaming challenges us not to only dream boldly, but to act with purpose, turning vision into impact. As we gather here, let's collect, listen, and inspire one another to take those next big steps, big or small, that lead to progress. Let this week be a spark, a reminder that united we have the power to transform dreams into reality. Thank you for being here and for contributing your voice to this incredible celebration. Together, let's make every week a dream week. And I'm going to pass it off to Jessica Montoya.
Thank you so much, Alexis. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Montoya. I'm your news anchor with Telemundo 60 San Antonio. We are very grateful for everyone that's joining us this afternoon, and also grateful to be able to talk about this very important issue and this very important topic, and of course to discuss the potential immigration policy changes coming, as well as the implications these changes may have on our families, on migrant families, businesses, and our communities overall. Now, joining us this afternoon, it's a list of panelists with experience in law, immigration reform, policy, and of course, we are very excited to hear about their expertise and analysis through these arguments on this matter. Without further ado, let me start with panelist Catherine Norris, attorney and immigration team manager at Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. Also, Elizabeth Almanza Villaseñor, with American Gateways, social and legal support manager. Also, Gabriel Rosales with LULAC, and our sheriff, Javier Salazar with Bexar County. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. Now, I want to reiterate the purpose of today's panel is to provide important information and this thoughtful discussion about the future of immigration and, of course, the potential policy changes under President-elect Donald Trump. Now, we want to make sure in specific comment as well, since these are policies that may or may not go into effect, some of our panelists may refrain from answering certain questions because some of them can have a potential legal challenge as well. Now, to start off this conversation this evening, we have a lot to cover. Let's start with President-elect Donald Trump's campaign promises, right? And that is planned, I think one of the most important, that is planned to carry out mass deportations of millions of immigrants, including long-term residents, which could lead to family separations and negative mental and physical health consequences. There's an estimated 11 million people are in the country without authorization. The Trump administration aims to leverage expedited removal processes, which will allow for rapid deportations without the usual legal hearings. Now, President-elect Trump has said he would also sign an executive order on his first day in office and call this a national emergency. Under not only this promise, but also Title 42. He's also mentioned this, that he would reinstate Title 42. So we're gonna discuss a lot from this. And to begin, let's talk about how exactly can the United States carry out this massive deportations. Probably Kat can help us on this, and if this is possible.
Sure. So just to start, during President-elect Trump's first administration, in his first weeks in office, he said he planned to deport millions of people. So what does the data show? What did he do the first time around? During the first Trump administration, he deported about 1.5 million people. For some perspective, during Obama's first administration, 2.9 million people were deported from this country. And during the second Obama administration, still more than President-elect Trump's first administration, about 1.9 million folks were deported. Biden's administration has been keeping pace with that, right? So it's not like we're in this moment where folks are not being aggressively removed from this country. The most up-to-date numbers for the Biden administration show that about 1.49 million people have been deported under President Biden. So that's right on pace with President Trump's first administration. So that he said he was going to deport millions of people, what he was able to do was about 1.5. That's less than many other former administrations. So that's just a little bit of a reality check. Now, if he's going to actually deport 11 million people, what he's claiming to, that would obviously be a significant increase. And those of us who do this work, who are in immigration court, who are representing folks involved in these processes, know that our current immigration system is just so overwhelmed that that kind of uptick in numbers is not just going to happen overnight. We do not have the infrastructure, we do not have the judges, and we do not have funds appropriated to remove that volume of people under our current systems. So like Jessica flagged, okay, so what then? And Project 2025 and other documents, administration officials have said, okay, well, we're going to do some new things. We're going to expand expedited removal. We're going to invoke the Alien Enemies Act 1789, which hasn't been used since the shameful Japanese internment during World War II. So they are looking at doing some different things. Attorneys are prepared for this. They have been preparing litigation challenges. And so I think I would just say it's not going to happen overnight, and things that are extra legal will be challenged immediately.
So Pat, with that said, I do want to follow up the question. What does that executive, saying that he's going to do an executive order, what is that? How does that differentiate from what we're actually seeing? Like you said, we're having also deportations. How does that change?
So and executive orders can do things, but they're also political theater, right? So what he actually does depends upon what law is being invoked. An executive order saying he's going to deport people, that in and of itself doesn't necessarily have legal impact, but that it's speculative. It would depend what the order says and what additional laws are being invoked to do that. Gabriel, did you?
Yeah, no, so the executive order is just that. It's an executive order. Like she pointed out beautifully. It's an impossibility to do what he's doing. So for us at the LULAC organization, what we're doing is just trying to identify safe zones, trying to put together toolkits so that we can put it out there in the community. Because what do you do if you do get deported, if you get pulled over? What have we done in the past? So this becomes of great concern because he did say such outrageous things. With us, it's about the national office going up to Biden and asking him to extend the TPS for all the undocumented people that are here before he gets into office. There's a couple things that this Democratic president can do to put a brakes on what he's doing. So here we are, been fighting for a lifetime for DACA, and so we need the DACA recipients to have some kind of a parole or a stay, giving them an opportunity to be able to stay in this country. What I've been told by President Palomares is that president has said that he's going to allow DACA. I know a lot of us have very doubts. I do myself. So for us with LULAC, it's about bracing for the worst and praying for the best.
And with that said, we do want to reiterate and mention what the rights of those immigrants and those families are. Many of them are probably in the process of asylum. Many of them have families with mixed, some of them are U.S. citizens, some other ones aren't. So how would that work with him? Because I know he also said he was going to target, over work rates. Let's put it at that, right? How is the person, how is an immigrant, or how are these families protected? What is the one thing that they should know?
So Jessica, I can speak a little bit on that. At American Gateways, one of our key points is empowering. So knowledge is power. So mass deportations, as the stats that Kat shares, those are the facts. But talking to our, those that are listening at home, my dad's a green card holder, my mom doesn't have papers, I'm born here, am I gonna have to move to Mexico? Those questions that we want to reach out to your regular person is to say, reach out and find out that you do have rights. You have rights, your mom has rights. Every single person has rights, regardless of what country you were born, your color, what language you speak. And those rights, we at American Gateways are ready, and other nonprofits are ready to share that. Very simple. We want to teach it to where, because again, this mass deportation is more just to trigger fear. And when there's fear, there's chaos and there's panic. And then on that part in your rights, since you have the right to be represented, you have the right to fight your case if you are detained, if you are pulled over, then that's where in that right you seek somebody who has that experience, like Kat or somebody at American Gateways or Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, IESIS, other nonprofits, to say, let me explain this all to you. Let me explain how we can fight this. Not to sign any papers. Some people will be like, we're so used to signing, you need to read before you sign. And these are individuals who are getting documents and not in their language. So the first thing, I'm not signing anything unless I have somebody who's going to explain it to me. So there is still a due process, regardless of there's an executive order. Just as so many laws have been passed in our states, we have still a check and balance going back to high school history and middle school history that, the school rock, there's a bill, but there's also laws to say, wait a minute, there's another court that can see if this is legal or not legal.
I just want to speak to that one point that you talked about, the chaos. And that's why it's important that organizations like LULAC step up and say, we're with you, that this is wrong, and that we're going to stand together with the undocumented community. But we also need local law enforcement to do the same. We also need city council to do the same. We also need the school boards to step up to the plate and pass resolutions saying we're not going to allow these people on our campus. It's been stigmatized. So I thought you make a good point, but it's what advocacy, people that aren't attorneys, and we rely on your attorneys a lot. And they're doing great work. But what we can do is everything, ordinary citizens to stand up, call that representative, call that city council person to stand with the undocumented community here in San Antonio.
And Gabriel, since you bring that up, I do want to ask, we have our sheriff, our Bexar County Sheriff. Thank you so much, Sheriff, for joining us. And this isn't obviously your first hearing on this. You've collaborated in the past, and that is exactly my question. How does local enforcement collaborate, let's say, with this executive order? Does local or state law enforcement have even a say-so in it if it says that local enforcement has to proceed on these, let's say, on these detentions and see who is an immigrant and who's here legally? So when it comes to you all, what's the take?
Well, again, the president saying that he's going to do something is a far cry from actually having the authority to do it. So I can say all kinds of things. I can say crime stops today. We're done. There's no more crime in San Antonio tomorrow. I'm going to outlaw crime. Well, it doesn't necessarily play out as well in reality. So I don't really he'll ever get to that point now. If and when he does, I haven't seen what it is that he's intending to put in writing. But to my knowledge, there's nothing in it that's going to command law enforcement to do anything. It might give us certain permissions if we so choose to, but it doesn't command us to do anything. The president's priorities are different than mine, okay? He's got his own set of priorities. He's got his own set of campaign promises that were made. Well, I made my own campaign promises as well to keep my communities safe. And in Bexar County, in San Antonio, immigrants are not who's committing crimes here. I've got a jail of about 5,000 and so many inmates in the Bexar County jail right now. The vast majority of those inmates are U.S. citizens. Okay, so it's not like we have, to those watching from home or watching from other parts of the country, even other parts of the world, this is not the wild, wild west where immigrants are just out, committing all kinds of crimes. That's not the issue here. So while I understand he's got his own priorities, mine are different. I've only got so many deputies to go around to police 1,200 square miles of Bexar County and 2 million Bexar County residents. So I'm going to put my priorities where I can be most effective. Gun crime, homicides, domestic violence. Again, the vast majority of those crimes being perpetrated by U.S. citizens. That's my priority.
Sheriff, and have you given a thought to maybe this situation can create a mistrust with officials coming from our immigrant community?
Absolutely. We talked a lot about chaos being created in the immigrant community. The chaos doesn't scare me so much as the silence in the immigrant community. What I mean by that is when these draconian laws are passed, if it ever comes to fruition, we will know for a fact. I will go to bed every night knowing for a fact there are people in our community allowing themselves and their children to be victimized in silence because they're more afraid of being deported than they are of the person that's actually committing these crimes against them. And so, talking about domestic violence, sexual crimes against children, they're allowing themselves to suffer in silence because they're more afraid to call me than they are of the perpetrator. So that's what I'm more terrified of. And so that's why I spent a great deal of time reassuring the immigrant community that, look, if you are a victim of a crime, please feel free calling us and giving us the report. There are laws in place that we can protect you. You have certain rights as a victim of a crime. It's just important for us that you feel comfortable enough calling us and knowing that you're not going to be deported. We're going to treat you like a victim or a witness. There's also certain protections for a witness to a crime. And so I want to make sure that people are comfortable reporting that. If I can say that same thing in Spanish, that would be great. Okay. Yo como el sheriff del condado de Bexar, nomás les quiero asegurar a la comunidad, es cierto, la comunidad hispana, la comunidad de inmigrantes, que si son víctimas o testigos a un delito, hay ciertas leyes para proteger sus derechos como víctima o como testigo. Entonces es importante que nos hablen a cualquier hora y nos den la queja si ven algo o si algo les pasa. Nosotros no vamos a arrestarlos, no vamos a deportarlos, sino que si son víctimas o si son testigos, los vamos a tratar como víctimas o testigos, los vamos a proteger y es más, les vamos a ayudar con los procesos para quedarse en el país legalmente mientras que su caso pase por las cortes.
Perfecto, Sheriff. Y con eso quiero decir que esta plática es el what if, ¿verdad? El qué si sucede. Es por eso que estamos preveniendo y queremos hacerle esa pregunta. ¿Qué haría usted en caso de, digamos, que se pasa alguna acción ejecutiva del presidente y crea más que la cuestión legal, crea más un caos emocional? ¿Ya usted está preparado como para dar ese mensaje que nos acaba de dar a la comunidad? ¿Qué sería el primer paso estando a 4 días de cambio de poder?
Bueno, no he visto ninguna orden, pero nos tenemos que fijar en las órdenes, ya cuando sí llegan a pasar. Si esas órdenes no me ordenen que hagan nada, entonces para mí se trata de si puedo ayudar al gobierno federal. Por ejemplo, si me mandan a pedir 100 oficiales para ayudar con algo, si no tengo los oficiales, no les puedo prestar a esos oficiales. Es más, si quieren poner, si hacen una redada y tienen 500 inmigrantes que quieren poner en la cárcel, no tengo espacio en mi cárcel. Entonces, aunque uno quiera o no quiera, se trata de con qué puedo ayudar si quisiera. Y mientras que no tengo oficiales para mandarles, no tengo espacio en la cárcel, no les voy a ayudar por eso.
Gracias, Sheriff, por contestar esta pregunta. Algo muy importante que hay que hablar, que eso también afectaría a nuestra comunidad, por ejemplo, how much will mass deportation cost according to Trump officials, right? So Tom Hoffman told NBC News that an estimated $86 billion would be a great start. So how maybe can or
Well, I think the important part is to talk about what the undocumented bring to this economy, right? And the success of the economy is based on, there's a few numbers here, 46.8 billion in federal taxes, 22.6 billion in social security, right? That they're not even gonna be able to take out. So 256 billion in purchasing power. So it's universal. But I wanted to get back to one point, because I really like what you're saying. And again, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, Mr. Salazar. And I want to work together with you to put that message out. But what if a rogue officer decides to take that into his own hands? What happens then?
Well, so there are still laws in place that prohibit racial profiling. And so if one of my deputies is suspected of racial profiling, then there are certainly processes in place to hold that person accountable, up to and including termination, up to and including putting somebody in jail. Now, I hope that it doesn't come to that point, but if it does, there are processes in place to allow for that.
I might leave the numbers to Gabriel, but just to put some words on it, the consequences of mass deportation, it could lead to workforce shortages in key areas that affect our economy, right? Including agriculture, which would cause grocery prices to rise. We would see worsened housing shortages, exacerbate existing labor shortages as well. And then already points about Social Security. I also did sort of want to go back to cost coverage, Liz, and the sheriff on this. Did you have anything you want to add with this? On the costs?
And again, like just reaching out to those that are non-legal, moms, dads, brothers and sisters, the kids that are translating this to their parents as they're listening is, again, we have that check and balance in our government and our constitution is the law of the land, is that even at that, some background on the cost of mass deportations, the Department of Homeland Security gets funding in different ways. So the money would have to be appropriated by that. So they would have to, you would hear on the news, senators, representatives are talking about moving this money. Even, just a little back knowledge on that, the USCIS department, which again, immigration is very complicated. They have different departments that do different things. They're run by the fees of applications, which is something that has been brought up, is they want to raise the fees. And we just went through the change in fees where it's thousands of dollars to become a resident. So where does that money go? It's supposed to help more people be able to become citizens become voters, residents, DACA, filing fees. So that's another thing to take a look at. Just talking about the money, where's it going to come from? And then segueing back with CAD, and I know TRLA, I've worked personally with some of the TRLA attorneys that we refer, because again, there's a lot of work that needs to be shared. And one thing, thank you, Chair Salazar is bringing up, is the victims. We have seen victims of fraud, victims of domestic violence, victims of trafficking. If I've been doing this for 22 many years, and it has grown so much in the last 10, 15 years, where labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and again, you do have that right. You've heard it from Sheriff Salazar. And again, as organizations, we want to teach you how to be aware and not panic, to get the badge number of an officer if that officer's racial profiling or being racist. These are your rights. This is what you can do.
And Elizabeth, I'm sorry just to add to that, because one of the greatest fears is absolutely that other workers might take advantage of these immigrants, adding to the fact that they want to silence them and not say anything. So what is the one important thing you could share on that? Where do they need to call? What are the rights? Y si podríamos compartirlo en español también.
Really quick in English, look out, and again, being careful of fraud, of notario frauds. Notarios in our Spanish-speaking countries are attorneys. And in the United States, if somebody confirming who you are, look at the state bar, the where attorneys get their licenses, confirm that they're attorneys that have immigration experience. Eso, puede buscar en línea, todo, diga tu hija, tu primo que buscan en Google, un abogado que tiene licencia para practicar ley en Texas, en Nueva York, en Florida. Y entonces, saber y ir a esas personas para ver y decir, algo me está pasando. Parece, en vez, a esta persona le pagaron $300 para cortar la yarda y a mí me dieron 50. ¿Qué pasó? Busca la ayuda, busca la consulta, que sería algo de preparar antes, sabiendo como que te quieren asustar, el gobierno quiere asustarte, sentar y decir, vamos a preparar por según uno piensa como emergencia. Y en eso se lo puedo pasar también acá, de la información de víctimas del abuso sexual.
All right, well, thank you, Elizabeth. So let's move on to the next topic. I don't know, before we move on, is there anyone in the audience that would like to follow up a question on mass deportations topic?
Yes, I have some questions. Especially all the immigrants that are here with no papers. Well, sometimes they need to go to make to ask for legal. It's ask for a pardon. I don't know, they need to make this process. I know all the lawyers here in San Antonio because I'm president of a Business Mexican Association. And the first thing I ask always, and nobody wants to take any problem, issues, to arrange, to help, nothing. So that's one important thing, because there are many immigration lawyers, but in the reality, they don't want to make this requirement of the perdones.
Waivers.
Yes, it's right. Yes, and so that's important, because you are saying call or whatever. Nobody wants to do these job, even they are lawyers. So, and most of the immigrants, they need to ask for this because they are here for more, because they already are here with, and they require this step. So what do you think about it? Because this is like that's something important. Not only suggesting going with the people. So which lawyers are really willing to work with doing this pardon process?
We have Victoria in the office. She was chairman of the Mexican American Legislative Caucus. She's just doing immigration work. I do have an attorney with on the LULAC State Board, Pamela Moreno. También she does immigration work, and we're gonna look into this. And one of the things we ask our attorneys is for pro bono, to try and help to do some of the work that they. And so most of the attorneys, the young attorneys that we have with LULAC at this moment you're just kind of circling the wagons to come up with some ideas to see what we can do to be helpful. But to look towards other organizations like Raíces, Catholic Charities, and it's all hands on deck. But it's never ever a for sure thing. But you're right. There's a big disappointment because no hay muchos abogados que quieran ayudar a la gente. And that's a little disappointing. But there are some there. There are some.
This is probably not going to be a very satisfying answer, but it's just every case requires an individual consult. It's very hard to make generalizations about everybody needs this type of assistance. And so we do need good lawyers, and we've got great attorneys in town at the nonprofits, and there's some great private bar folks. There's also, others out there that aren't practicing law in a great way, but there are tons of good attorneys. Everyone's just extraordinarily overwhelmed because the demand so far outpaces our ability to meet it. And so, there are good sources. You can check with the Texas State Bar. The ALA, which is the American Immigration Lawyers Association, has lists of ALA certified attorneys. So if you can't get representation through one of the nonprofits in town, it's always good to go there. But yes, for folks who are in private practice, it is going to be up to them about whether they decide to take the case or not. And I know it's frustrating because it's a key piece of all our advice. Find an experienced immigration attorney de confianza que puede llamar en caso de emergencia cuando uno se está detenido.
And just to support on that, coming from a nonprofit, working in the private sector and then also in the nonprofit, attorney's going to charge you for their work. Private attorney, you want to make sure that they have the experience. And as nonprofits, Catholic Charities, Raíces, TRLA, American Gateways, there's some other small nonprofits that are trying to pitch in as much as you can. And that is something we always hear. And these are things, again, well, my brother told me that if I would live here 10 years, I'm going to be able to get a green card. It just depends. again, the immigration system is so complicated. There's requirements, and then there's things that will disqualify you, and then there's ways that there's a big word they say extreme hardship. What we think extreme hardship is not the same that what a judge or an officer might think is extreme hardship, but it needs to be prepared and explained on each individual case. An example I do really quick is it's like a doctor and a nurse, and it's like a lawyer and a paralegal. If you go to the doctor and you say my heart hurts, that doctor's not gonna say, oh, it's surgery. Depends what's happening to your heart. So it might be a different surgery for one patient, same thing in a legal. It might be one legal strategy for one case and a different one for another.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Sorry, we have to move on to the next topic. So let's talk about the possibility or proposal of eliminating deferred action for child arrivals, which is DACA program, also TPS or CBP1. So the future, as we know, DACA program remains uncertain due to the pending litigation, and President-elect Trump tried to eliminate it during his first term. Over 500,000 DACA recipients would lose protected status if it is indeed eliminated. So what can we discuss about the potential impact on DACA recipients? How can they get protected if DACA, let's say, he finally goes through it and eliminates it? What are the options that they have?
I know on DACA, if my voice cracks because that was a huge hit during Trump's last administration, where I really never thought something like, that vulnerable community. I mean, all of us, the immigrants, are kind of vulnerable community would get hit like that. I know many DACA dreamers, what they call them, that are doctors, lawyers. Some of them are making more money than I am, and contribute so much. And some of them have been in this emotional roller coaster for the last 8 years. It is very difficult. That's where us as citizens reach out to our senators and our representatives, make our voices heard, and tell them about those that we know about, and say, this is why this law needs us. This doctor's a dreamer, and they saved my mom's life, so that they put a face to that word dreamer and DACA.
When you see, that's some of the things that we're doing with LULAC right now, is to get those stories out of who these young people are, how amazing they are. But it is asking that president to increase the capacity to do the advanced parole. And so that's what we're trying to do.
But is there a way to protect them? Let's say that these people that are contribute to our economy, to our healthcare system, or any other in any other way, are they protected if, let's say, DACA were to be removed?
No, it's
I mean, they would need an individual consult with an immigration attorney to see whether they have any other relief available to them. But as a category, by virtue of, just being brought here by their parents as young children, no.
What about TPS? For those that have it has been extended to certain individuals coming from certain countries. Now, what happens to them also if it is eliminated?
So just to be clear, TPS is a law that was passed by Congress in 1990. President-elect Trump cannot do away with TPS, right? But the Department of Homeland Security does have the authority to designate and redesignate the countries that are eligible for TPS, which is temporary protected status for folks that are from countries experiencing urgent humanitarian disasters, usually environmental disasters or armed conflicts. And so it can be extended in 6, 12, and 18-month increments. The President Biden, just extended it for Sudan, Venezuela, El Salvador, Ukraine. And so that will be in effect through the end of that period into 2026. Should President Trump try to terminate that before the periods that have been reauthorized, it would be a very uphill legal battle. He tried to do it his last administration, it was unsuccessful. So under the way the law currently stands, during those periods of redesignation that have already been set, those folks should be protected under current law. That doesn't mean he won't try to do something.
And what would you say about the CBP1? I know we've heard it has its challenges as well. Many of them, the language barrier, many of them, the technology barrier. What would be a replacement for that? Or is that actually helping asylum seekers or any other type of immigrant that's coming to the United States?
CBP1 app by President Biden was put out there to kind of satisfy something for the coming in the right way. The only thing is their languages, it started off in English, then it was kind of, they translate to Spanish, trying to add other languages, but you have people that you want them to use a cell phone, they're traveling through jungles and in the, the middle of the rural areas, trying to get a signal, trying to get an appointment. So it is difficult, it's challenging. Those that we have seen and they've shared stories with us about they came in and they were working and they did it right, is just a handful of those that are bottlenecked in this asylum process right now. Again, repeating, the asylum it's very complicated. It changes. Those are things that I know that, asylum seekers are what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks with asylum. It is very difficult. It's hoops and ladders and, rings of flames to get through that. And, teaching in American Gateways, we do legal orientations where we teach asylum seekers. This is, as of right now, this is how to seek asylum. So the CBP1 app, we haven't heard anything as to my knowledge if they're going to turn it off or keep it on. I have heard that it's helped a handful, but it's not even a good band-aid. It's just putting your finger in a hole and damn, that's just interesting.
Are there any questions from our audience regarding this topic about DACA, CB1? To move on to the next topic this evening, it is also another proposal about ending the birthright citizenship, correct? President-elect Trump has said that we'll sign an executive order to end the birthright citizenship for children or some immigrants, despite it being guaranteed right under the Constitution, which would negatively impact the healthcare workers and the economy. It would require at least one parent who is a lawful permanent resident or citizen before they can be issued a passport or a social security number. So has been said in diverse interviews as we've seen. So is it guaranteed under the Constitution? What is the probability of this?
Just quickly on the legal end, yes, birthright citizenship is enshrined in the United States Constitution in the 14th Amendment. It cannot be taken away by executive order. It cannot be taken away by legislation. It can only be modified by a constitutional amendment. That's to Gabriel for the commentary.
Yeah, no, she's right. The 14th Amendment, it's enshrined. Even with the slim razor, majority that they have, they can't do it. So he's talking nonsense.
Anyone has any questions on this topic? We can move on to the next, which is the returning to the Mexico policy, right? Formerly called the Migrant Protection Protocol. So that is another President-elect Trump has stated that he will reinstate the remaining Mexico border policy, and that he may also use military spending to carry out stricter border enforcement. And that is one thing I do want to ask about military doing this domestic issues, and with how does that, to go and explain and see how that would differentiate, how does that make a difference? Because that thing also creates a hostile environment within our community.
So that's two big questions that are different. So do you want to start with Remain in Mexico?
So,
And then we'll go to
just briefly again, explaining this to the laypersons, the humans that are, trying to understand what you hear on the news. MPP is, okay, you're gonna.
So MPP stands for the Migrant Protection Protocols, which was the ironic and official name.
Exactly.
The other name for the Remain in Mexico program.
We're bouncing off each other because there's so much. Some of these can take like the whole hour on these individual subjects. But what happened on that is like stay at the border, have a hearing at the border, and see if you're gonna come in. But again, let's give you a look behind the scenes. The process that was going through were with immigration judges that already have hearings. Like here in San Antonio, we have an immigration court. We have two because they try to hire enough judges and there's not enough judges. So those judges are trying to hear a backlog of thousands of cases that are in person on top of cases that are at the border of people that are waiting and trying to do it through that process. So it wasn't as successful, was not successful because it's still that bottleneck. It's still, again, trying to solve a problem with a Band-Aid where it's something that has to be reevaluated. The system has to be looked at. But that's what it looked like is, again, on the court side of it. And then again, going back to the rights, these individuals have rights to have an attorney. So they're trying to call an attorney at 1 a.m. because the next day they're going to see a judge. So then it calls that like, hey, they're not getting their due process. We're not giving them their rights on that.
Yeah, maybe if I could just say, so Remain in Mexico, we did this already, right? Like Liz was saying, it was in place in 2019, 2020. It came back by court order for a bit in 2022. So when it was first rolled out, folks that were from Spanish-speaking countries in the Western Hemisphere and Brazil who presented at a port of entry or entered without authorization and encountered immigration officials could be, up to the discretion of the Border Patrol official they encountered, could be placed in this program by which they received a notice to appear in court and then were sent back to Mexico to wait. So there were about 77,000 people that were returned to Mexico under this program during the various months it was in effect. And it was extraordinarily flawed for two reasons. I would characterize it. The number one is the general danger and insecurity in the border towns, especially in Tamaulipas, in the ports of entry where this was in effect. It was in 4 ports of entry here in Texas: El Paso, Eagle Pass, Brownsville, and Laredo. Brownsville and Laredo, the 10 ports that people had to present to appear at. And some of it, I was looking at numbers just to be able to communicate this, and I found it extraordinarily ironic that it was very well documented, right? Opportunistic criminal groups could identify the migrants that were presenting at the border for this purpose, and they targeted them for kidnapping, sexual and physical assault, and other harms. And Human Rights First, in fact, documented more than 1,500 cases, like halfway through the program, of folks that were enrolled in Remain in Mexico and had been kidnapped or assaulted in these ways. And at around that same time, at the point in the program when 42,000 cases had actually reached conclusion, only 500 of those folks were awarded relief. So 3 times as many people were assaulted by virtue of their participation in Remain in Mexico as actually received relief in immigration court. So yes, it was very flawed for those reasons, as well as lack of due process. As Liz mentioned, the access to counsel was virtually impossible. Attorneys who are already in these border towns, overworked, too much demand for the legal services providers, and the clients are in Mexico. It was extraordinarily difficult to communicate between attorneys and clients. Folks were calling hotlines that were already flooded. When they were kidnapped, their phones were taken. If their attorneys' numbers were in their phones, attorneys were extorted. It didn't work, and it should not be run.
Just to add to that, everything that they're saying here is the justification for this Congress to act, to pass some type of immigration reform that needs to make a more humane process. Right now, it's very inhumane.
And to make it more efficient also,
make it more
like you were
efficient.
saying, at the border and for the judges, what would be the most practical or efficient way to go into
And the piece of legislation that they had up there did more than what we wanted, I'm sure. It's not, the progressive probably wouldn't liked it, but they would have hired the judges. They would have, at least at ease on the backlog that's been happening, but they couldn't even do that.
And now using the military to immigration, invoking the Alien Enemies Act, like we were saying, the 1798, or the Insurrection Act, how would that contribute either to the situation for better or worse?
So this is an extremely complex area of the law, but just to say, the National Guard and the federal armed forces are treated differently. There are different provisions that apply. So the National Guard may perform federal missions such as border security under provision of the law called Title 32. And it's a hybrid function where they're being paid by the federal government, but the National Guard is acting at the direction of the state. So this has played a major role in border enforcement under the George W. Bush administration, under Obama, under Trump's first administration. And so they are using National Guard to support the Department of Homeland Security in surveillance, in what they call it, basically building the border wall, erection of barriers, I think, yes, transportation, provision of equipment. So that is happening. It is permissible under the law. The military is much more complicated, and I am not qualified to tell you under which circumstances it is permissible.
Likewise, it's very complicated. I mean, I don't know, Sheriff Salazar knowing a little bit more on the law enforcement part of it, because that kind of brings in what our law enforcement agencies, the National Guard, the police, the sheriffs, the FBI, SB4, anybody who has any kind of law enforcement certification requires training. And that was in these laws, depending how they want to reenact it, because then we have our law enforcement agency partners are like, well, how do I know the difference between somebody who's documented and undocumented? Because then you go into that, you know, because of the language they speak, because of the accent that they have, because of the color of their skin. So yeah, military is something very complex, like Kat saying, trying to bring it back to, you know, just kind of locally. We got to be careful with these things. When the laws come back, we've got to see how they're going to be put out, which I think, you know, like exactly what Sheriff Salazar has been saying is, what are they going to ask?
So another thing I want to see any of you's point of view regarding the relationship with one of our strongest neighbors, which would be Mexico. How do you think that would display or moving forward?
Just for us, with us is that LULAC and the advocacy are looking to develop a relationship with the consulados of Mexico and with the newly elected head president in Mexico. We've heard some good things that she's working together. It's, like I said, it's all hands on that, community advocates, attorneys, all of us to come together to make sure that we expose some of the inhumanities that are going on. I think that's critical. Just to say one thing, you know, I think at the end of the day, right, for us, justice and equality for all of us is at the ballot box. So all of this terror and all these things that are happening within our community should make us want even more to register. What we saw this past election with Latinos didn't come out to vote. And a very large percentage of them voted for that man that's about to come and deport our people, or try anyway. So it's upon us to register to vote and hold people accountable. Don't, you know, either party, you know, for me, it's about accountability. And I don't see accountability in either one of the parties. I see a better party with the Democratic Party. I definitely see that, and I'm a Democrat myself. But I also have criticism within our own party that don't do enough, that don't stand up strong enough on behalf of the immigrant community. The 20 years that we've been fighting for DACA, they had opportunities to do something. And you mentioned Obama, deporter in chief, and what's been going on. So we need to continue to build blocks of accountability and get out there, register to vote, and let the undocumented community know that we're with you, that we love you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Anybody want to follow up a question on this topic? Also, so another thing, ideological screenings for immigrants. So President-elect Trump has promised to bring back the travel ban from Muslim-majority countries he implemented in his first term. His campaign wrote on X in October 2023 that he will reinstate and expand the ban on travel from terror-plagued countries and implement strong ideological screening for all immigrants. Now, speaking about the legal and constitutional concerns, of course, how would the proposal guarantee freedom of speech and freedom of religion under this topic?
Repeat the question.
How would this proposal guarantee the freedom of speech or freedom of religion? You know,
What proposals were you?
the proposal about the screenings for immigrants, from banning or expanding the ban from people from coming from these countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big subject, because you're talking about now politics besides just kind of a immigration law, immigration screening. As you know, going back to the question about Mexico, our American gateways, we listen carefully again for the facts of the policy. We are in touch with the Mexican consulate because they are our neighbors, or down the street, 3 hours down the street from us. The Mexican border is just to get the facts. But that's something kind of how I say above our pay grade.
Or we can also ask Sheriff on this, because also that brings up to the question, and how do not do, like you were saying, racial profiling or treatment. How are these things handled when it comes, let's say, to those type of laws and expanding?
one thing, and then I'll let you respond. It does leave room for racial profiling. I think that's the problem with all these type of screenings that they want to do. Right? Go ahead.
Well, that's the problem. Again, I think it's just more of a campaign talk on the president-elect's part, to be honest with you, because I don't know how it'll be implemented. I mean, so what do? Do you only discriminate against people that are from predominantly Muslim countries, or what do you do with somebody that's from a friendly country but they happen to be of Muslim religion? What do you do with somebody that gets into the United States and then converts to Islam? There's just so many questions left unanswered, and I just don't think that it's a practical solution to what it is. You got plenty of people from Muslim countries that are great people. You got plenty of people that are United States citizens that are not such great people. So I don't know how you split that.
Or just go into the sentiment as you know, in a few days we're going to be observing MLK, Martin Luther King, you know, that things were changed because people got together. And that if these laws come in, or, you know, they tell us, you know, we're not going to accept Muslims, then that's where, as we go into our civil rights, and, you know, we talk to our representatives and our senators and saying, hey, we want to go forward, you know, we want to fight for, you know, equal rights and no racial profiling. Why are we going to go back to, you know, 50, 60 years? And again, this is perfect timing in observance of MLK. It's like, we want to stay where everybody is treated equally, regardless of your religion or race.
Do you then take and make U.S. citizens who happen to be Muslim, do you make them wear a big M on their shirt so that they?
And that's what I was gonna say. When he talks about broader screening, I don't know if in your experience, what does that translate to? What does that mean? What do these people need to be in the lookout for? Do we have any idea what a broader screening would be?
No, that's
I'd have to put myself in Donald Trump's mindset to be able to understand, and I can't.
Yeah, there's words out there, but I guess we can't think of that, because if we're in the same spirit, it's, again, treat everybody equally regardless of where they were born, what language you speak, who they pray to.
Now let's talk now about the visas H-1B. So President-elect has said that he is actually for this and that he would expand the H-1B visas. Do any of these other people that might be at risk can actually apply to these visas, or how does that really work? O las personas también en español, para quienes tienen esas visas H-1B, ve cómo esto beneficiaría, y si las personas que están en riesgo de perder su estatus legal, digamos DACA, llamémoslos TPS, podrían entrar en estas visas.
Depende de lo que el presidente va a poner. Otra vez, regresando al mismo respuesta que ponemos. Si dicen, esta es la ley para que, y estos son requisitos para que estas personas puedan aplicar por el H-1B, entonces hay que ver qué van a ser los requisitos y qué nos van a negar. Ahora, ese tipo de ley de migración de empleo es más complicado, porque hay dos partes. Lo que pasa en las leyes de visas migrantes es que para trabajar o de empleo es algo que era ni político, es que estas personas están quitando el trabajo de ciudadanos americanos. Pero en el proceso que ahorita tienen presión para dar visas de empleo, es que van a confirmar, ahorita hay un proceso que tienen que confirmar que no hay un ciudadano americano que califica para ese trabajo. Y esos visas están dados a personas que sí califican y que aseguraron que nadie que es ciudadano americano calificó o aplicó por ese trabajo.
Y solo para clarificar que, bueno, hay tres tipos de inmigración, digamos. Primero, uno puede inmigrar por medio de un familiar. Segundo, puede emigrar por medio de una razón humanitaria, por asilo, por visa U, otros tipos de casos así. Y tercero, como está diciendo, es por medio del empleo. Y el empleador tiene que iniciar este tipo de caso. En los otros tipos de casos, la persona, el inmigrante en sí, puede iniciar el caso por su propio. Eso no es posible en este tipo de casos.
Y personas deben tener mucho cuidado y esperar que llegue la ley, que la ley está interpretado y explicado porque igual no queremos dar lugar a personas de aprovechar y alguien decir, yo te puedo dar 10 visas, viene a trabajar conmigo, págame tanto, y es fraude. Entonces, igual, por favor, muchísimo cuidado y esperan, y tanto que no queremos que te ponen en pánico, no también queremos que brincan en algo que oigan para nomás aplicar por algo.
Perfecto. ¿Alguna pregunta sobre este tema? Algo muy importante que quiero resaltar es, por ejemplo, los derechos de los inmigrantes que también pagan impuestos. Eso es, lo hablamos brevemente, pero ellos necesitan conocer a qué tengo derecho, a qué estoy autorizado, aunque sea un inmigrante sin documentos en este país.
Pues, derechos como igual, como repito, no,
O derechos públicos, ¿verdad?
Exacto. Eso es, como digo, otra hora. Públicos, ahora hay que mirar y asegurar que estás llenando las solicitudes por beneficios de comida, de beneficios de Medicaid, y no poner algo falso o fraude, o si alguien te dice, nomás ponga esta dirección o ponga este número. No, todo debe de ser correcto, honesta, nada de fraude, porque entonces va a causar problemas en el futuro. Hay agencias como, por ejemplo, American Gateways, no tenemos esos servicios, pero como Caridad Católicas, que tienen personas que están entrenados a decir, usted está documentado o es migrante, si calificas por estos y no calificas. Busca lo que es cierto, lo que es verdad. Igual en eso de sus derechos, como digo, todos tenemos derechos. Otro tema que en eso de hablar de beneficios, hemos oído que como de personas que necesitan asistencia médica, atención médico, y dicen, pues no voy a ir porque me dijeron que van a preguntar mi estatus. Ahora, sí es cierto, ese ley sí pasó aquí en Texas, pero te vamos a decir hoy, y estamos de acuerdo. Si tienes un daño, necesitas atención médica, ve al hospital, por favor, ve al hospital. Si te preguntan, ¿sabes qué? Tu derecho es decir, no voy a responder a esa pregunta. Sí, usted puede negar de responder a esa pregunta.
Pedimos que todos dicen igual, que todos dicen no quiero responder a esta pregunta.
Ahora, cuando empiece la nueva presidencia, habrá mucha incertidumbre, quizá ya el simple hecho de que el nuevo presidente esté en la Casa Blanca, quizá va a crear un poco, lo hablamos con el sheriff, de desconfianza. ¿Qué puede una persona inmigrante o qué no puede responder? Por ejemplo, si está el sheriff aquí, nos puede contestar también qué es lo que recomiendan a las personas a la hora de interactuar con los oficiales para que no tengan miedo y no se metan en problemas con la ley.
Bueno, uno tiene el derecho de guardar silencio. No se les tiene que contestar las preguntas de un oficial en condiciones limitadas. Sí, pero si alguien sabe que no han cometido ningún delito, entonces no tienen que contestar preguntas de los oficiales. Nosotros, más, ahorita, como está la ley ahorita en el estado de Texas, nosotros como autoridades locales no tenemos el derecho para arrestar a una persona solamente por asuntos de inmigración, si no han cometido otro delito. Entonces, uno tiene que saber los derechos y guardar el silencio cuando se debe. Y como les digo, nosotros en el departamento del sheriff del condado de Bexar, nosotros tenemos un programa que se llama Unidos, que nosotros tenemos juntas, reuniones con la comunidad hispana, la comunidad inmigrante, para darles a saber qué son los derechos que legalmente. Nosotros trabajamos con otros socios. Antes hemos trabajado con Raíces, con Caridades Católicas, y es más, vamos a seguir teniendo esas juntas. Solamente nos tienen que seguir por medio de las redes sociales y fijarse cuándo van a ser estas juntas. La mayoría del tiempo nosotros tenemos esas juntas en, por ejemplo, iglesias o escuelas, algún lugar donde alguien se sienta confortable. Obviamente no la vamos a tener en la estación de policía por razones obvias, pero nosotros queremos que el público tenga esa confianza con venir a nuestras juntas, que tengan esa confianza de tomar la información. Nosotros no vamos a andar preguntando quién es legal, quién no es legal. Es más, ya cuando hacemos comerciales, por ejemplo, antes de uno de estos eventos, les decimos a todo el público que su calidad migratoria no importa. No solamente queremos que vengan a las juntas, Y eso es un programa que nosotros vamos a seguir haciendo y ojalá el público se sienta confortable.
Sheriff, y a veces puede ser confuso y queremos aprovechar que usted está con nosotros para que nuestra gente realmente, una persona que digamos no tiene documentos legales para estar en este país, pero comete algún tipo de infracción, que se le tiene que parar, que se pasa una luz en rojo, que igual manera tiene que contestar a la autoridad.
Sí.
¿A cómo se manejan este tipo de casos y cómo debería de ser para no pasar la línea? O el oficial le va a preguntar su estatus migratorio y eso es importante aclarar.
Bueno, es más, en estas juntas, por ejemplo, nosotros le decimos, mira, uno para manejar legalmente en el estado de Texas tiene que tener una licencia de conducir. Si no la tiene, entonces no puede manejar legalmente. Ya hay varias agencias, ya sé que el Departamento de Policía de San Antonio toman otras formas de identificación. Nosotros tomamos diferentes formas de identificación, particulares, identificaciones consulares de otros países, pero por eso tenemos estas juntas para darles a saber qué son sus derechos en ciertas situaciones. Pero ya uno, si no ha cometido ningún delito, pues no tiene que contestar esas preguntas. Obviamente, si lo paran manejando ilegalmente, entonces eso es otro asunto.
Sí, bueno, gracias al sheriff. Ok, entonces, cuando yo estoy hablando con mis clientes, tenemos como 3 puntos principales en pensar en cómo protegerse a ustedes y su familia en este momento. Primero, sí, evite parados de tráfico. ¿Ok? Porque en muchas partes mi organización estamos en el sur, en el oeste y la parte central de Texas. Y si uno no está en el condado de Bexar, está en otras partes de Texas, cuando uno tiene una interacción así con un oficial de la policía, de otra oficina de un sheriff, si uno muestra una forma de identificación como una matrícula consular, pasaporte de otro país, puede resultar en ser trasladado al custodio de ¿verdad? A inmigración. Entonces, este consejo es muy local, depende en dónde está. Y si usted tiene la habilidad de sacar una forma de identificación del estado de Texas, una tarjeta de identificación o su licencia de manejar, hay que hacerlo, ¿ok? Y si no, también hay formas alternativas de identificación, como aquí en nuestras bibliotecas, en Austin, en San Antonio, en otras ciudades, que tiene foto y es como un enhanced ID en the library. Hay que sacar uno de estos, ¿ok? Porque no todos pueden pedir identificación del estado de Texas. Uno tiene que tener un permiso de trabajo y su número de seguro social o su tarjeta verde, digamos así, su residencia. Y si no tiene eso, todos no son elegibles, entonces hay que pensar en sacar otro tipo de identificación que no es de otro país.
Ahorita también estamos trabajando con la caridades católicas, pero también la Iglesia Católica, para un programa nuevo que ojalá lo vayan a lanzar aquí en San Antonio, en el condado de Bexar, con las identificaciones de parroquia, trabajando con la iglesia, dándoles otra forma de identificación. Yo les he prometido a la iglesia que ya cuando se hace ese programa, nosotros vamos a empezar a aceptar esas identificaciones también. Entonces, ahora, eso nomás va a ser de esta región, pero si alguien vive en otra parte del estado, otro estado, es importante que se informen con la iglesia ahí localmente si hay un programa así existe.
Eso es excelente. Una de las conversaciones que tuvimos brevemente es para los derechos de ciertas personas protegidas bajo la ley. Quiero hacer énfasis, por ejemplo, en las personas que han sido víctimas de la trata humana o las víctimas de violencia doméstica. En caso de que algún tipo de acción ejecutiva se llevara a cabo, estas personas continúan con esos derechos protegidos. ¿Cuáles son sus opciones? No nada más para ellas, pero para sus familias.
Bueno, no sé qué vaya a pasar. En este momento, sí hay varios tipos de asistencia migratoria que uno puede calificar si ha sido víctima de trata de personas, la violencia doméstica, asalto sexual, especialmente cuando uno se coopera con la policía o el fiscal, cosas así. Entonces, y este tipo de asistencia sí puede incluir a los familiares de la víctima. Entonces, este tipo de son leyes, entonces no son cosas que se puede cambiar rápido por medio de acción ejecutiva. Hay ley estatuaria, statutory law, que enshrines the U non-immigrant status, T non-immigrant status, the Violence Against Women Act. So, entonces eso sí, es posible que vayamos a ver cambios, pero no es algo que puede cambiar en día uno de una vez.
Perfecto, y una pregunta que no sé si alguien me puede responder esto, pero ¿qué pasa, digamos, una persona, una familia llega a ser deportada, o el padre o la madre? ¿Qué pasa con los valores de la familia, verdad? Hablando de sus casas o lo que han pagado, sus pertenencias, ¿hacia dónde va esto? ¿Con qué me quedo y con qué realmente no tengo nada? ¿Cuáles son las opciones?
Es algo que también estamos preparando en sesiones informativas de cómo les de derechos, como dije temprano, que deben de estar preparados. Entonces, por una emergencia, como los que todos los incendios en California, hay unas personas que dicen, pues ya tengo la aseguranza o tenía yo documentado en un documento de poder que si algo pasa, que esta casa va a ir a esta persona. Entonces, sería algo que recomendamos y en la cual en todos los años de practicando casos de migración, Texas Rio Grande TRLA, Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, tiene un kit que referíamos, que es algo, es como un libro donde dice, si algo me pasa en la cuenta de banco, va a ir con Elizabeth. Si algo pasa de mi casa, tengo un documento legal que mi esposo o mi tía va a encargar de los asuntos. Y es algo que queremos seguir recomendando a personas que comiencen a preparar por lo que está pasando. El poder de abogados. Y en eso hablando, el consulado pueden contactar. El consulado tiene recursos para personas que dicen, pues no tengo dinero para un abogado. Mexicanos, ciudadanos mexicanos van a hablar con el consulado. Hay varias organizaciones que están haciendo clínicas para ayudar a personas con estos documentos. Yo sé que también como Caridad Católica tiene un día Ask a Lawyer, que tienen abogados con esta experiencia también.
Sí, eso en el trabajo de conozca sus derechos, esa parte es como digo, son como 3 puntos principales. Evite los parados de tráfico. 2, sé qué hacer en caso de contacto con oficiales de inmigración. 3, protéjase a usted y a su familia por medio de hacer este tipo de plan, como está diciendo Liz. Y realmente lo que uno debe hacer es junte todos sus documentos importantes en un lugar y tiene un familiar o otra persona de confianza quien sabe dónde están esos documentos. Y los documentos a que estoy refiriendo deben mostrar cuánto tiempo usted está viviendo aquí en este país y sus relaciones con su comunidad, ¿ok? También hay que hacer esta lista de contactos de emergencia. Todos en la casa tienen que saber dónde está esa información. Hay que encontrar un abogado de inmigración de confianza y hay que tener este número para esta persona en caso de detención. Y es muy importante, hay que hacer un plan para quien va a ayudarle con sus hijos, especialmente si no tiene relación con el otro padre. Entonces, hay que decidir quién va a estar la persona encargada de sus hijos. Y es súper importante que añade a esta persona a la lista de contactos de emergencia en las escuelas de sus hijos, ¿ok? Para que ellos tengan esta información en caso de detención durante el día de la escuela. Y también tiene que hacer un plan financiero.
Exacto, y sabemos y confirmamos con la oficina de TRLA que ellos tienen este maravilloso kit en su página de web, donde pueden bajarlo y comenzar a llenarlo. Perdón, me dijeron que sí. Pero sí, nosotros hacemos copias y se lo damos en nuestras sesiones informativas. El consulado mexicano ha preparado una bolsa con ese kit también, el libro para ya prepararlos. American Gateways tenemos página de web de American Gateways, tenemos los videos de cuando te para la policía, si ICE está en su puerta, si estás viendo una rueda, qué pasa si alguien te está preguntando, estamos lo mismo, tanta gente en TikTok y viendo redes sociales, por un video nos ayudan y pueden compartir esa información.
Ahora, esto que estamos haciendo por ahora se está difundiendo en redes sociales, en la televisión y en diferentes plataformas digitales. Quisiera que cada uno dentro de su área nos pueda explicar qué es lo que piensa va a ser el reto más grande para nuestra comunidad y nuestra comunidad inmigrante, por supuesto, bajo esta nueva administración. ¿Qué es lo que ustedes como expertos le recomendarían a la comunidad? ¿Qué sería ese reto más grande? Speaking about the biggest challenge with this new administration and speaking of all its what is possibilities, what would be the message in your area to our community?
I just want to reiterate the need to, again, protect your rights, know your rights, know what questions you have to answer and which questions you don't, and in which circumstances. Obviously, making sure that everything that you're doing is legal by the book. If you don't have a license to drive, then don't drive. That's the best way to eliminate that. I get that many people, you got to go to work. Well, there's public transportation that you can avoid that, putting yourself in that situation. That is one way of safeguarding. But again, I want to reiterate, and this is the most important thing. If you take away nothing else from what I've said this evening, please know that if you are a victim of a crime or a witness to a crime, you are undocumented, please report it. The last thing we want is anybody allowing themselves to be victimized, or even worse, allowing their children to be victimized simply because they're afraid to be deported. Lo voy a decir otra vez en español. Es importante, el tema más importante de esta noche, en mi opinión, es que uno tiene que saber que si es una víctima o un testigo de un delito, es importante que se sientan confortables hablándole a la policía y dar esa queja. No queremos que nadie se aguante ser víctima o no reportar la información si son testigos. Hay protecciones por medio de la ley. Uno tiene ciertos derechos, siendo víctima, siendo testigo, tienen derechos, tienen protecciones. Nosotros te ayudamos con eso. Es importante que se sienten confortables con nosotros, hablándonos y dándonos la queja. El número de teléfono de no emergencia en mi agencia es 210-335-6000. Ese número se puede llamar 24 horas al día. 210-335-6000.
Everything he said, right? That conoce los derechos, know your rights, plan ahead. We're going to be having some workshops at the LULAC conference in Braunfels. We also have conoce los derechos on the website. So reach out for help. People are there to help the community, but plan ahead. Yeah.
There is so much that is not in our control, and there are so many changes that are going to be coming fast and furious. We saw it last time. It is overwhelming. It's overwhelming for immigrant communities. It's overwhelming for their advocates and their attorneys. And so it is important to try and stay calm as you digest these things and to focus on what is within your control, and that is making sure that you and your family are as prepared as possible for the worst case, should it happen, and making sure that you are getting your information from reliable and trustworthy sources, and that you are relying on legal advice for immigration matters that come from, again, trusted sources, because it's a very complicated area of law. Yes. Entonces, en español, hay que enfocar en lo que sí es bajo su control, ¿ok? Hay que hacer un plan para usted y su familia sobre cómo van a estar preparados en caso de emergencia, en caso de detención. Y es súper importante que encuentre un abogado de confianza. Hay que hacer una consulta individual para entender bien qué son sus opciones, qué son sus derechos. Y notarios no son abogados que pueden aconsejarles sobre la ley de inmigración.
Echoing on what Salazar and Gabriel and Kat are saying, please do not panic. Please look for the truth with law enforcement. Be respectful, listen, obey the laws. everything we're talking about know your rights sessions and being prepared, respect each other, be an example for each other. Those of you that are saying, well, I'm listening in because, or I'm going to find out about these things because I want to do something, reach out to the different organizations, to Malta, to LULAC, to TRLA, to American Gateways, to Catholic Charities. The harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. So volunteers with interpreters or just helping people, welcoming people. If you want to volunteer, nonprofits are nonprofits. We look for funding to continue our Know Your Rights sessions and helping to be able to represent more individuals. En español, por favor, respecto uno al otro. Respecto a los oficiales, escuchan, espera a buscar la verdad de las leyes que están pasando, no sabemos cómo van a pasar, cuándo van a pasar, pero busca la verdad. Igual, poder hacer con usted sus derechos, prepara usted sus familias. Algunas personas están escuchando diciendo, pues, no soy migrante, no tengo familia, pero quiero hacer una diferencia. Ve a las diferentes organizaciones, a ser voluntario. También diferentes organizaciones como si somos sin fines de lucro, necesitamos donaciones para ayudar a la gente, la cosecha grande, trabajadores pocos, para ayudar a personas a buscar más abogados o asistir y dar estas asociaciones informativos. Y les agradezco mucho por su tiempo. Thank you for your time.
And as we are actually nearing the end of this conversation, I do want to ask you that you are in close contact with our migrant community. What are the most frequent questions that they ask? So maybe somebody out there can feel related to or has a similar situation. What is it the one thing or two things that are asked the most or that they require the most? What type of services, what type of needs you can share with us?
I know I always hear, en mi caso, mi comadre, mi vecina, mi tía me dijo. So that leads into a whole other thing. So somebody's telling you that, but okay, aunque te dijo la comadre, or your sister told you that, or the lady at church told you, let's go find somebody and learn something. Let's look up somebody to get you the truth. So that's something very common, and it starts with that, and it's just pointing that person to the right directions, because again, it can be misinterpreted and everybody's case is different.
I think some of the things that I've been encountering with our community is the lack of knowledge of what's going to happen, you know, the fear, and then me not being able to respond, to be able to give answers. That it's just been a horrible experience in the last couple of years.
So as we wrap up and we'll finish up, I would want to mention that once again to mention our resources that we have within the city, within the sheriff's department. Sheriff, you can mention any number or any website or any program that you were speaking about earlier, just to reiterate to our community and see what they can reach out. And also if they're specific, like let's say reach out to the officers, and of course with every organization as well, please.
Well, once again, our number at the Sheriff's Office, non-emergency number is 210-335-6000, Los 10-335-6000. You can also, if you want to get information on you know, any number of law enforcement type topics, but certainly with regard to our Unidos program, you can follow us on Facebook, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, or we have a Spanish Facebook page as well, Sheriff del Condado Bexar. So once again, 335-6000 es el número de nueva emergencia. Quisiéramos darles toda la información posible al público. Si tienen preguntas, los pueden seguir por medio de las redes sociales, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, o también tenemos páginas, cuentas en español, Sheriff del Condado.
Tienen el LULAC, TexasLULAC.org, que tienen mucha información de la inmigración, y tenemos el National LULAC.org también, tienen información también.
Yo trabajo con Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. El mejor lugar para buscar información y ayuda es nuestro sitio web www.trla.org. Tiene información sobre cómo llamar y nuestras áreas de práctica. Tenemos abogados que especializan en más de 40 áreas de la ley, incluso la familia, la ley de empleo, adición a inmigración. Y podemos asistir a las personas que califican para nuestros servicios, que ganan menos de una cierta cantidad de dinero y viven en 68 condados en el suroeste de Texas.
So American Gateways, AmericanGateways.org. We have offices in Waco, Austin, and San Antonio. We provide legal orientations to those individuals that are detained in CARMS, Caddo, and Pearsall. So if you have that call, I don't know where my mom or my dad is, I think they were picked up, you can give us a call. We also provide an immigration court help desk. We provide legal orientation to those individuals that don't have attorneys, that have to talk or will be seeing an immigration judge, and we explain their rights and train them. We also provide representations for those that have been victims of crimes, asylum seekers, and also family-based petitions. And we do offer outreach sessions. We train school districts, universities, doctors, lawyers that don't have familiarity with immigration. And you can contact us we have different hotlines that you can reach us. AmericanGateways.org es nuestra página de web. Probamos servicio de orientación legal a personas que están detenidos, orientación legal a personas que tienen que presentar en corte, también servicios o representación para personas que han sido víctimas de crimen, a personas que tienen peticiones de familiares y también personas de asilo o refugio. Tomamos esos casos. Depende de la capacidad, háblanos, podemos ver si tenemos un programa de fondos para ayudarlos. It depends on the funding we have, but we can see if you qualify for any of our programs that we have.
Una pregunta, antes de que se me olvide, era a las personas que igual temen, a lo mejor sabemos que en dado momento se mencionó que se iba a restringir también la posibilidad de personas, por ejemplo, que pidan esa ayuda que mencionaba, o ayuda al gobierno, como estampillas, o llámese de otra. ¿Qué le dirían a estas personas que necesitan de eso y estamos en este justo cambio de gobierno?
If you are an American citizen, we have mixed families. I'm from a mixed family. My dad was a resident, now a citizen. So U.S. citizens do have the right to benefits. In some cases that there are refugees or asylum seekers that do get benefits, but again, make sure that you are filling out these benefit applications correctly and truthfully. I can say that I don't know much about it, and if not, I'll probably refer to Catholic Charities that do have social workers and that have experience on that.
And you might be referencing the fact too that there's also a ground of admissibility called public charge, right? So that the law was changed last time around. One way, it's probably going to come back. But I think in this moment, if you are eligible for the benefits, you may apply. If you have questions about the impacts on your immigration status, even if you are eligible, you should consult an attorney.
Yeah, the word public charge is that one that got through around during the last administration. But again, we have to see what they're going to hit and how they're going to hit it. We don't have that information right now.
Right, anybody from our audience that has another question? Any last message that we might have forgotten? Anything else that you may want to add to this conversation? And if not, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, everyone on our panelists, of course, for bringing this important information to our community. And I'm sure we're going to be a close call to y'all. Muchas gracias a todos por acompañarnos. Y bueno, recuerden que esta información va a continuar a través de las redes sociales y en telemundo60.com. También pueden descargar la aplicación y encontrar más. Gracias. Gracias.